The mystery woman arrives. Okay, go ahead.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So, Adoria, today we're going to talk about where we've come from. So, I guess it's been about um, probably 6 months ago, but really taping started in November, where we decided that we should do a teaching series on the church, the organism, or organization.
Mm-hmm.
And that teaching was birthed out of all the blogs that you have written on His Words on Read at blogspot.com.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started this journey, and to date, where we are is that we started with doctrines, and then we talked about the church,
Mm-hmm.
and we ended with, is the church an organization or organism? And after we did that taping about, is the church an organism or an organization, we realized that people would have to decide what to do next once they figured they were in the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And where did they go from there?
Mm-hmm.
And so that brings us to today.
And so what we've done is we've taped a few people from the body of Christ, and we've asked them to share their testimonies, when and how and what happened when they discovered they were a part of an organization, and how they went about disentangling themselves. And you will see that in the preceding tapings, or as part of this tape, just preceding segments. And I want you to realize in those tapings there are a few common threads that you'll see throughout all the testimonies given. And they are that each person did or came to a seeking of the Lord on their own. That's one of the commonalities that you will see. Another is that God didn't change, we changed. Another is you will see that God, that as Jesus said would be, his sheep hear his voice, whether they heard his voice themselves through seeking him through the Bible, or hearing his voice through someone else. They all recognized his voice, and that it's a process. That it is a process. It doesn't happen instantaneously. And in these testimonies, you're going to see that we all have a personal journey in life, a personal journey in Christ. And you're also going to recognize that in this process, there is a loneliness, but that truly we are not alone. For he said he would never leave us nor forsake us. I pray that you're all blessed as you watch, as we were blessed in the hearing and in the making of the video that you're about to watch.
So before we end, we've asked all the people that we interviewed, what would they tell someone who's planning to leave an organization? So I asked that question of you. What would you tell someone who is planning to leave an organization?
Wow, I hadn't anticipated that question. Um, it's not a decision I think that can be made lightly. I'm going to use all the knowledge from everything I've learned personally, but also what I've learned and experienced and seen through other people. It has to be about Christ Jesus. If it's about what a man did or what a man said or what a man didn't do, um, you don't recover. And you keep seeking and you keep searching, and you go to different buildings and different churches and different organizations and different places looking for someone to be different than that which you experienced that hurt you or brought you to that place of disillusionment or whatever it was that made you realize this isn't it. And until it becomes about him, until it's him that you're truly, truly seeking, and that you're willing to forsake all for him, until you come to that place, it's just all vanity. It's just blowing in the wind until the next time you realize you just blown from one place to another place until you're disillusioned with man again, or somebody says something again, or something doesn't go right again, because it's only in him.
Mhm.
So, you will come to that. You have to come to that, and you have to be willing. I don't want to say do it alone, because you're never alone, but you have to be willing to find him and hold on to him. And so, my friend, I'm asking you the same question.
Well, I would say what I always say is that it's not personal. And what I mean by it's not personal, that it's exactly what you said. It is about him. I think a lot of times when we come out of an organization or we join an organization or a church, um, we go into the organization trying to find ourselves. And because of teaching that you hear, preaching, and how people approach you, you tend to think that somehow you're different. You're different than your brother or your sister. And you feel that you have because the doctrine is this is your personal relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes very personal, but it's not personal.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why it's not personal is because it is truly about him.
Mm-hmm.
And he is no respecter of person. And he treats us all the same. So what he expects of me, he expects of you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not personal. Where it does become personal is how I respond to him.
Mm-hmm. And then that's the journey,
And
right?
that is the journey.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
So how do you guys fit in within the body of Christ now?
Wow.
I'm going to answer that.
Please.
Okay. So a lot of times if people are watching the videos, they'll see you.
Because you're the mystery woman.
Because not because I'm the mystery woman, but because of my place in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And my place in the body is to be a support. My place in the body is administration. My place in the body is to help and hold up. And in one of the interviews, someone had mentioned that they felt like that they would be protected because that's what would happen, that they would be protected. And I thought about that and I thought, well, my part in the body is to protect you.
I know. Because that's what he said.
That's what he said.
And it's funny when you ask that question, it's not something I would normally even think about or say.
Yeah.
But my place in the body is to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I can't even imagine beforehand what comes out of my mouth. But the people of God, we're supposed to be free in Christ. We're supposed to be the light that he came that we would be. And there's Christ inside of me that is strong and fierce and fearless when it comes to speaking what must be said and protecting God's people by speaking the truth and calling a lie and calling fake when it's fake and saying what is that is. That's my role in the body of Christ. And in that is taking care of God's people, because that's what he's called me to do, to care for God's people. Now, that said, it's his job by his Spirit to do everything else. And I've learned that. And in that, I have great comfort that I don't have to do anything else but my part.
Sure.
You do your part, I do my part.
Yep.
And you will see each person as they share. It's so beautiful because you see everyone or different people from his body being individuals, having a different place, a different function, and yet we're all strengthened by each function, and yet we are all completely different. Completely different. And that's what makes us strong.
Yes, it is.
If you could, would you share with us when, or not when, what happened or how you became aware that what you were participating in as church was not necessarily the Church of God truth.
Okay. When I first got saved, or when I first started going to the church, um, I didn't really read my Bible that much, and but I enjoyed all the things we were doing, like the dancing, and that was a part of praise and worship. I came from the Catholic Church, so to be able to get up and to move around, and to doing all the things that we did, as far as whether it was 1 hour or whether it was 2 hours. I thought 2 hours was great. Mostly, sometimes we would be there for like 4 hours. That got to be, after a while, it became more monotonous than a joy. But in the beginning, it was a joy because I thought I was worshiping God. And then I started, I can't remember exactly when it happened, but I remember that we had to study to show ourselves approved. And so I picked my Bible up, and I started reading it. And I would do a study. I would just pick something that I was interested in, and I would study it, like praise, or I remember one time I was studying uh, the armor of God, and so I was learning different things. And as the pastor would preach about them, sometimes I would go back and I would look at this, but let me go back a little bit. After the praise and worship, and after we would go home, and if someone wasn't at church, they would say, well, what did the pastor preach about? And this is when I started realizing I wasn't getting anything, or I wasn't getting it, or I wasn't getting something. I couldn't say. He preached about faith, he preached about this, he did da. And I would take notes. And I would be like, well, wait a minute. And I'd go look at my notes, and I still wouldn't know what he actually talked about. And so, and this is during, and I had started studying at this point, but I couldn't repeat what was coming from the pulpit.
So as you began to study, what did you discover?
This was not like one day I was like, oh, that is not in the Bible. It was more like a gradual thing where I would be like, well, and then I would try to make it fit. I would try to make what I was reading and what I was learning on my own fit into the doctrines that were coming from the pulpit.
Did it fit?
It did not fit, and I couldn't make it fit. But I just assumed I was wrong.
Okay.
And then as time progressed, it became harder for me to assume I was wrong, because that's not my nature. And truly, even if I am wrong, I think I'm right. And I will fight tooth and nail until you prove me wrong.
So when you said it wasn't your nature to think that you were wrong, at what point did you realize you were not wrong, and that what Christ was revealing to you yourself was indeed Christ, and what you were hearing was not?
That's hard to decipher, because even after we left, there was still so much false doctrine that I still believed, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so when
What did you do with that?
I started, there came a point along the way when 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 we first we were praying. Well, I was praying that something would change, that it would change, because I knew something was wrong, and I knew God could change it. And so I just, and that was the prayer. And I continue to participate, but I lost something.
Did you lose faith because nothing changed? Or what did you lose?
I think I lost maybe, I don't know. I can't put my finger on it exactly. But I knew something was missing. And I don't know. I don't want to say Jesus, but that is really what I think I lost. And I've never thought about that until this very moment.
So
Truly.
so when you let go of that, you felt you lost Jesus because that was your, at the time, your whole understanding of him.
Yes, partially. Because I was still studying. I was still um, trying to, um, I was still trying to make it work, you know, at that point. And I remember when, when I realized that, because at some point I still thought I was important, or I had some, uh, because the pastor used to say, but he hadn't said that since it was a long time. You know, if I'm doing something and you see me getting ready to stumble, you know, and this was like in the beginning, you know, but I still carried that with me. And so, um, you guys will remember this. We were supposed to have service was supposed to be 45 minutes long or something like that, an hour and 15 minutes. And we did that one time. It was one of the best services we ever had. And, or maybe two times, but I want to say one. It might have been two. Um, and we never did it again. And so I called him on it. I called him and I said, Pastor, I wanted to talk to you about something. I was surprised he answered the phone. And he said, go ahead. And so I told him, I said, you know, you said we were supposed to go for 45 minutes. And because you said that, when you say something and then you don't do it, then people think that's fine. That's the way it's supposed to be. You know, you can say whatever you want to say and then don't follow through and don't do it. And he said to me, did Dory put you up to this? I said, sorry, you're not supposed to say that.
That's okay.
I said, no. I didn't tell her I was going to call you because she would try to protect me. And then he explained to me how sometimes we think God said something or something like that, and that he explained it away. And the next service, um, he stood up in front of the church and said, somebody called me and told me that I said we were going to have service for 45 minutes. And um, the entire church acted like he never said it. That blew my mind. Everybody acted like it didn't happen.
So let me ask you, Teresa, what did that create inside of you?
A weird kind of, I wasn't angry. I was surprised. I was surprised at the people because they were like, no, like it never happened. And that, except for George, they, I keep saying names. Sorry.
That's okay.
And so, because he had said something to him once after that, and he was talking about it. That's the only reason I know.
Let me ask you this. So what did you learn?
From,
What was that teaching you? What did you learn from that?
About God in particular.
I never, in this whole thing that I'm talking about, God was not involved. Even at that point, I didn't think, well, God's a liar. I mean, God wasn't involved in my heart or in, and even when I was talking to him, it was more about, this is making you not look good to the people. It didn't occur to me that the people were going to agree with whatever he said, no matter what it was.
So let me take you forward.
Okay.
So you came to a point, and then you were able to disentangle yourself
At some point, yes.
at some point. And what state did you find yourself in after?
After we left?
Yeah.
After we left, well, let me start here. When you guys first left, I had not intended to leave. And I went to the church that day. And he stood over me and asked me what I was doing here. And I said, I don't know. And I left.
So you had intended to stay. Why? In spite of everything that you knew, everything that you'd experienced, everything, the contradiction that you had discovered for yourself,
Yeah.
you still were going to stay. Why?
Because I felt an ownership. I felt like, this is my church. Why should I have to leave? And then I realized I didn't belong there. I didn't belong anywhere.
So
It still wasn't about God. It was not. I can't say that it was, because it wasn't.
So clearly, I think you've just given the best description of all of an organization, because you felt an ownership of it.
I did.
And yet you say clearly it had nothing to do with God.
It didn't.
And you did not want to leave.
Because it was mine.
Because it was yours. So it was very personal to you.
Yes.
And then when you decided to leave, and it sounds like you felt more forced.
I did.
What did you do?
Well,
I don't mean action-wise. I mean, what did you do in terms of all that you felt?
now at that point, I felt angry, and I actually was like, well, I've been praying for for God to do something, for there to be a change, but I never expected the change to be, you gotta go, meaning me. I gotta go. That is not the change
That
that
you
was
were praying
supposed to
for?
happen.
So you're praying and asking God to change something, and you never expected the answer to your prayer to be you change.
Right.
You wanted everything else to change.
I wanted everything else to change.
Okay, so God answered your prayer and you changed.
Yeah.
And then you found yourself in a situation you did not want to be in.
No.
And you were angry.
Yes.
And then what did you do?
Well,
no, let me back up. There's been a lot of years.
it has been a lot of years.
How many years did you find yourself angry? Because I can, the way you're describing it and even expressing yourself, the heart of what you're expressing is tangible to me. I can still feel the gravity of what you felt as you're telling me.
Okay. Here, somebody put their finger on my sore spot. And I didn't even realize it until we were talking. She said, we're sitting outside the table. We're at a party now. We're sitting outside at the table. I'm talking to my friends and different people. And she comes out and she sits down and she has another lady with her. Now, the other lady, I don't know. Okay. And she says, ask Teresa how her and Lita met. And I said, we met in Oceanside years ago. Lita and I have been friends for 20 years. She said, no, ask them where they met. And then she goes, at the Cult. I said, what? She said, at the Cult. And so the other lady is like, how did you get out? She's thinking Jim Jones, drinking Kool-Aid and all that stuff. And so I said, we just walked away. But as we continued to talk, I was mad right from the jump. And I said, the church, I said, they're all the same. I'm paraphrasing now, I'm jumping forward. And I said, they're all the same. She says, well, no, they're not. I said, yes, they are. You go to your church right now, and your pastor's preaching something that ain't got nothing to do with God. And she said, well, she talked about one of our other friends, and she said she's gun shy. And then she said, and you're gun shy too. I said, I'm not gun shy. I'm just not going to be taken again. And so my anger flares from time to time, So I guess I'm still getting over it.
So the hurt was deep.
Oh, yeah. Oh, very deep. And I never looked for God in another church setting. I remember my son, he found a church that he liked. And so I went for his sake, but I did not go thinking God was going to be there or that anybody there knew God at all. That was truly my motivation for going, was because he went and he liked it there. So much so that he got baptized. And when that pastor left, because he said to me, he's real, and that's what he's real. And I know what he meant by that he was an honest man.
And probably a gifted man.
Yes.
Gifted from God.
Yes, yes, I'm sure. And actually, he married you and my brother. And so when he left, because it's one of those, they're under the Baptist umbrella, but they don't say they're Baptist. I don't know how that works,
Mhm.
but uh, he had to leave, and they went back to another to head another church in his wife's community, and I can't remember the state, Ohio, I think. But anyway, when he left, Michael stopped going.
So, how do you see the church today?
Honestly, I can't. I see the people still.
I don't mean the church as in, let me clarify. I mean, the what do you see as what truly is the church today? What is your understanding today of what is truly the church?
This is still small in me, and I don't know another way to say it.
That's
It's people like us, um, who 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 I don't know what no one look is not a good way to put it, but people who have a sincerity of heart, looking to find him, to do his will, to I want to say to, I don't know, maybe I don't know how, I don't know. I don't have a good answer.
that's okay. That's okay. And so, Teresa, if you, in closing, if you could say something to someone that is in the same that is finding themselves in a similar predicament or a similar place that you found yourself in, what words of wisdom or encouragement could you give them to help them in seeing themselves through?
I would say, don't be afraid, because being alone is not the worst thing that can happen to you. It's not.
Jasmine, you were um, you have been in what is known as the church from the time that you can remember. And then you came to a point where you decided to go someplace on your own. So, first, let me ask you, why did you decide to go to someplace on your own?
I decided to go to someplace on my own because I thought that that was the church. And I went to several different places where I thought that that was the church. And I thought that there was something that I needed or I was lacking. And I really didn't discover who I was as an individual, like if I knew Christ or if I was just going through the motions of having to go to church.
Mhm. So, initially, when you went, did you go because I'm a Christian and
I
that's what you're expected to do?
I didn't even know if I was a Christian. I just went through the motions of going to a building.
Okay. Okay.
And you're going to a building. Did you go because of the people and the fellowship? And was that the thing that kept drawing you back, the people?
Yes, it was the people. It was the people, and I can't really say there was fellowship because I didn't know what fellowship was. It was just maybe communication between me and one other person or other people.
Did you ever feel a part of something?
At times, yes, I felt a part of something, but I also felt like an outsider, being a part of something sometimes, and then not being a part.
And why is that?
I felt sometimes it was maybe my disability or me being in a chair or something like that, but that was like my main thing. Oh, because I'm in a chair, I'm not a part of this or I'm not a part of that.
So it wasn't necessarily the people, but something you felt within yourself?
Yes.
Okay. So at what point did you decide that you were no longer going to continue um, participating as you were participating?
When I finally accepted the Lord as my personal Lord and Savior, instead of just going to certain buildings, and I began to search for Him on my own and know for myself who He really is.
And when did you come to that?
I would say within the last 3 years.
Okay. Okay. So up until that time, you've been in what is called church your entire life, but it wasn't until about 3 years ago that you actually acknowledged Christ as Lord.
Right.
That's a revelation to me.
Me too, because you never told us that. I'm sorry. We all got to chime in on that one.
But
I'm glad she's
I'm
saying
glad
that.
you're sharing
Yeah.
you're being honest.
Honest, yeah.
Because I think that happens for a lot of people. Now, when you acknowledge Christ as Lord, is it because of something that happened when you were participating in the different places you were going, or no?
No, I felt like in the different places I was going to, there was no freedom, no liberty for me to weep if I wanted to weep, holler, scream, whatever, or rejoice in my own way. It was always, I have to do it this way, man's way, and not the way that the Lord wanted me to do it. So I was just going through the motions.
When you say the Lord wanted you to do it, what do you mean?
I don't mean the Lord. I mean, it was just like I was going through the motions of everything, thinking it had to be one way, and not the way that I wanted it, that I thought it should be.
Okay. Okay. So what in this time since you decided that you wanted to acknowledge the Lord, what has changed in your life since that time until now?
My heart, the way I accept people, the way I answer certain people, and my responses. You know, it's not a harsh response.
So you think what's changed is you?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Um and what have you learned about Christ?
I've learned that for me, my walk is different because I'm still learning about Christ
Mm-hmm.
and what it means to be Christ-like.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still kind of discovering that out for myself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So one of the questions we had asked previously, if there were one thing that you could share with people who may be in the same situation that you were in, which is having been in what was known as the church from the time they can remember um, up, what would be the thing that you would share with them?
I would share with them that the building is not the church, and being presenting yourself as you are, not as someone who has to have certain type of clothing or what you wear. It's not about your attire, your outward attire. It's about what's in your heart and how you receive things from the Lord.
Mhm. Is there anything else that you would want to share?
No.
Can you tell us when you became aware of what you were participating in as the church was not truly the church of God?
Well, I can't give you a specific date and time, but I can tell you from, when I would go to the building and I would sit down and we would go through all the things that we go through, Sunday to Sunday, Wednesday to Wednesday, or whatever. And I just felt an emptiness inside. That's when I realized that something's wrong. Something's wrong. Um, and I say that from the standpoint of I had my own personal things that I was dealing with, but you're supposed to come to the church. When I was going to the church, and I would go there, time and time again, and I realized that there was an emptiness still inside of me, along with what I was dealing with personally myself. I felt like, I was going there, but I wasn't supposed to be being set free like I say I was supposed to be. So I knew that there was something wrong, and I felt like that I was doing what I was told to do, and nothing was happening. And so that's when I realized that something is wrong. So I was going day in and day out whenever we met, and I was basically just going through the motions.
Do you think did you find that there was something wrong with you? Did you think there was something wrong with you? Or did you think there was something wrong with your faith? Or did you lose trust and faith in God?
Well, there was a part of me that thought that there was something wrong with me because of the teachings that we were taught. Okay. Um, I felt like it was, be honest with you, it just felt like it was really mumbo jumbo because it felt like I was looking at God through man, if that makes sense. If that makes sense. Okay. Um, that's what I felt.
When you say looking at God through man, tell me more. What do you mean?
Well, since I'm not in the organization anymore, I realized that, and this is the biggest thing that I've realized since I'm not in an organization anymore, is that God is not like man. So it's a big difference.
When you say organization, um, what do you mean?
Well, when I say an organization, I mean there was you knew when you were going to go. Um, you didn't really know when you were going to leave. Um, and you had to be there. You had to do certain things to basically show your love for God. If you didn't do these things, then basically there was something that was wrong with you. So that's what I mean.
Okay. And so you said initially that you couldn't give us a date and a time when you knew something was wrong. Was it a process of, was it over a process that you came to it, or, and what was the defining factor that's made you say, I'm not going to do this anymore?
Well, I felt like that. I can't say that I actually audibly heard anything from God, but I knew inside of me that this was not what I wanted to do. I knew that there was something wrong, and I basically told my wife, I'm like, we need to leave because something's happening. This is not right. And when I told her that, it I just kind of continued to go along and go through the motions. It took a while before we actually literally left. So
And after you left, what was your experience?
my experience was I didn't want anything to have to do with God. If this is how God is, then I won't be serving the Lord. I mean, it's a hard thing to say, and I really didn't want to feel like that way, but that's how I felt God was. So I basically, did my own thing.
Excuse me, when you say that if this is God, I don't want to serve the Lord. So to you, you equated all the behaviors and everything that was happening at the organization you were in as that is God. To you, that was God.
Yes and no, because inside of me, I felt like I knew that there was something that I knew something wasn't right, but I couldn't put my finger on. In other words, I couldn't say, I could say I knew that wasn't God, but it was like, how can God be like this? So there inside of me, I knew there was a glimpse of hope, but I couldn't, I don't know how to put it in words. It's kind of hard to explain. Because when I first became born again, I knew there's certain things inside of me that I could go with that I knew. And I knew that everything that we were going through wasn't what I felt inside.
Okay. So you say after you left, you began to do your own thing.
Right.
And then what happened?
Well, my wife continued to seek God and continued to search for God, and by going to different places. And she never treated me any different. Um, and she continued to love me and show compassion for me, the things that we expect Christ to do, Christ-like things. And because of the way she was treating me and the way she was acting towards me, um, I was like, well, this is how Christ should be, and it moved me back to Him. That's how it worked. So,
Tell us a little bit about the doctrines, because being in the organization, there must have been many things that you were taught. So, what was the process of relearning about God?
well, me being in the organization was, um, I was put in a position of head of as a leader. Um, so in the things that I did personally, whatever, I sinned and I was punished because of that. And in my thinking and my upbringing as from my parents and stuff, it was like, when you do something wrong, then you get punished for it. And so I kind of put it all together that way. And so that made it very, very hard for me. Um, Doctors, as far as, I didn't realize how bad it was until we left. So I'm kind of getting confused in my thoughts.
It's okay. So what was the?
Because y'all are drilling me hard here.
So what were okay, I understand when you say the doctrines and you think of all the things that you've been taught over the years. So what was the process like, if there is a process at all, of you beginning to change the way you thought in terms of the things you were taught? Did it just happen instantly, or?
No, it didn't just happen instantly. It started coming over a period of time. I started seeking the Lord on my own, and uh, the more I started seeking Him more on my own, the more I realized that He was not like a man. So it's been time. It's been a process. It's been a process of kind of like pulling weeds or whatever. You pull out these weeds. All this stuff that you thought that was supposed to be God, or you were supposed to be Christ-like, or the things that I did that were wrong. Uh, that I never could come back to God because of my sin, and I just kept realizing more and more that He was not like a man. So as time has gone on, um, it's been a gradual change.
So what is the one thing that you would tell someone who's thinking about leaving an organization?
If you truly are born again, you'll know. Inside, you'll know. Because you just will know. You can sit there and go through the motions all you want. You can go, and people do it all the time. But I have a problem with believing that you don't know. I just have a problem believing that you don't know because you do. If you know him. If you truly are born again, then you will know. And he will show you. He will show you. I just believe that with all my heart. He's no respecter of persons, and so he did it for me, and I believe he'll do the same thing for you. So that's the main thing for me. I just knew. And then later on, I spoke out and said something. But I just knew inside of me, this is not right. I truly believe people can't say that they don't know, because I believe truly you do know. It's just a decision of whether you want to stay or not.
Good here.
Okay.
All right. Can you tell us about your experience in becoming aware of the fact that you were participating in an organization that truly was not the Church of God?
If I have to think about it and I go back, I don't think I actually was aware. I keep recalling one incident where Kelly was part of the women's house, and there was one night at church, and it was a strange night. I could feel it was a strange night. I didn't know what was happening. We had all gone. It was a Wednesday evening, and when we get back, Kelly has packed up her stuff and has left without a word to anybody, which I found very odd. And when I look back, I see myself as I was a good sheep. I did whatever I was told. Mm-hmm. But then I realized I may not have known for myself, but when I heard from another individual, I knew it was right. Because I oftentimes go back and people say, oh, well, you only left because of what certain people told you. And I have to think about it, and I go, well, yes, it's true. But for some reason, what they told me, I knew it was true. I knew it was right, that this was not right. This, whatever was going on in this organization, that we were in, was not correct. And so I chose to believe that, and in leaving, there was no, I didn't feel like I was doing something bad or that I had to hide and I had to sneak. It's very odd because I didn't think about it until just now. Mm-hmm. The whole thing and us in leaving, it really was just, it was a decision and we left. It wasn't just me, it was me and a few of the other women that lived in the women's house with me. But it wasn't, I didn't feel it was wrong to leave. And although, and maybe now I'm just realizing I probably did know, but when it was told to me, this isn't right, I automatically knew within myself, okay, this is not right. And I was fine leaving.
So, okay. So then you left, and you said at the time you really didn't know. So now, as time, so when you left, then what happened? Let me ask that first. When you left, then what happened?
Then,
with your walk with God.
Okay, so I began to, well, we continued to come together to meet. And I began to think, and it's been a long process.
Yeah.
A long process. A lot of things happened, changed,
Mm-hmm.
and I began to think, well, maybe I didn't know what I was doing. Maybe I don't know who God is. I did know that I was born again.
Mm-hmm.
That I do know, that I was born again. And it became a struggle. Many things happening year after year, a struggle, going to different churches, not wanting to go to any other church, not wanting to, I didn't know what it meant to follow Christ. So there was a time when I just stopped.
So let me ask you, you just said in going to many other churches and you didn't really want to, and then you didn't elaborate. Is it that you didn't want to commit?
I didn't want to be in that type of environment again. I remember going to one, and I think it was an Easter Sunday, and it was praise and worship, and it had gone on for over an hour, and I thought, okay, this is not this can't be right. We're just standing here for an hour, and I left. I said, I gotta go, and I left. And so I began to realize, okay, so everything we did, all of those, the praise and worship for an hour, the sitting in church for another hour, leaving Sunday morning after church, going home, taking a nap, getting back up at 5 o'clock, dragging my 5-year-old daughter back to church again, and then Wednesday nights late, and I began to think, was I just going through the motions? What was I doing? I thought that I was being a Christian. Come to find out later on, I didn't know him at all. Because I was just doing what I thought was required of me. Not realizing, doing my dutiful duty in all that, thinking I'm a Christian, I didn't know him at all.
When did you come to an understanding that you didn't know him at all? Even though you were born again.
Even though I was born again. 2 years ago when I became sick, I thought that the reason I became sick was because I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do as a Christian, which was to follow Christ in a manner of the ways I thought that what you're supposed to do. Well, that came upon you, Lita, because you weren't going to church. You weren't praying like you're supposed to. You weren't doing all these manner of things.
Now, did anybody say that to you, or was that all inside
It was
you?
all the doctrines in me, and I beat myself up over it. And I called a sister in the Lord, and she came and she prayed for me. And God healed me, and I realized it wasn't because of anything, but because this is life. This happens to people. It wasn't all of the doctrines from the past kept coming up. You weren't praying every day. You weren't going to church. You're not. And I could hear the different people I would run into. Where are you going? You're not covered. And it was all coming back to me as I'm going through my illness and having to go through chemotherapy and radiation, and realizing I did not know him. What God would give you cancer? What kind of a God would do that? That's not God.
Let me ask you, because you just said something that brought to mind when all these doctrines and even people that you would run into and say to you, you're not doing this or you're not doing that. Did you find the questions and the things that were coming to you to give you hope and freedom and liberty, or did you feel that it was bondage to have to do those?
No, that was bondage. I did not feel any liberty or freedom at all. the liberty, for me, the liberty and the freedom came when I realized that God healed me in spite of everything I'd done for years, that God is who he said he is, and I didn't know him at all. And the liberty came in knowing that it's not because of me. None of it was because of me. It was all because of him and who he is. That's it. It wasn't because of me. It's nothing I do. None of the doctrines, none of it. And healed me, not because of me, but because of him. That it's all because of him. It's not because of, if I don't pray for an hour, is he still, he's still who he is. It is not about me, but it's about him.
So now how have you proceeded forth? What's happened now?
How I proceed is I don't have any set, ritual. But now I am beginning to, and it's taking me time, day by day, glimpse at a time. It is about Christ, and Christ is in me. I am born again. So I rehearse to myself, I am born again. Christ is in me. It is him. It's about him. It's not about me. And it's about me changing my thinking in the way that I thought a Christian was supposed to be. And that I am responsible for my own salvation. I have to walk it out each day. And there are days when I at the end of the day, I will go, oh, my thoughts, did I think of Christ today? Or what today did I think about Christ or God? And some days it's through the middle of the day and I recall certain things and what I'm doing. And I realize God is not out here, because I always thought God was out here, but that Christ is in here. And that as I seek him, as I read for myself, as I walk out my own salvation, that is how Christ is being formed in me.
So you're growing.
A little bit. But it's not, it doesn't feel like a noose or something hanging over my head. There's a freedom that I can't explain. And almost like like when you rest, you kind of go, oh, thank God. That's what it's like. It's not this, I can't explain it, but it's not this thing that you just, a burden. It's not a burden.
I have one question. So a lot of times people come into the body and they wonder about their place in the body. Tell me where you fit in.
Well, let's see.
Let me re-ask the question.
Okay.
Not where you fit in. I guess I want to know, in times past, everybody's like, where do I fit in the body? What is my calling? What is my this? What is my that? Where is that? Tell me how you think about that now.
Now I think about it as in, God made me who I am. And this is who I am. And I think I used to think it was something different or special that you had to do, not realizing he made you, so who you are in the body is already there. And it's something that's very easy for you. It's who you are. And people say, oh, Lita, you're a teacher. And I'm like, well, I don't really consider myself a teacher or whatever. Not the kind that, and it doesn't mean not that type. But I think I've always been able to instruct, but not like big, huge, but one-on-one. And it's very easy for me. I've always done it and never thought of it as anything than that, oh, that's just what I do. But it functions no matter where I am or who I'm talking to. And women, it's mostly girls and women. and showing, helping them, instructing them, and saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. And it's like a one-on-one. And I think we think that it has to be something, oh, I have to be this, given a label. There's no label, it's just who you are. And that's what you do. And that's how you function, is just by being who Christ made you to be, and that's it. And stop trying to be somebody you're not. And that in itself is another relief. Yeah. Oh, too much work trying to do something else that.
So, as we are asking everyone, if you had one thing to share with someone who is contemplating or is considering, I'm in this organization, and what do I do? What would you say to them?
I would say, if you are truly born again, oftentimes we think, as just being the person sitting in the seats, that we don't see him like the people up in the pulpits and all of that. But just to, if you love him and you are born again, just take a minute and to think. You probably already know, as Donnie had said, and have the confidence within your own self to say what you believe, what you matter. You matter. Because I think sometimes they think that, but I don't matter because I'm just a sheep. And what do I know? But you do matter, and you are a part of the body, and everybody needs you to be that part of the body. So just to think that you do matter, and if you know that that's what you need to do, then that's what you need to do.
Amen.